Well, hello, everyone. I'm super excited to have a super formal, and if you can't see the video, he is suited up and tied up and ready to go. And so Kurt and I have some real impressions to make on David Steyn, who's on the commercial side of Anytime Postage, also known as Anytime Mail. And so super excited just to connect with him. He's been in the industry for a while, and I had reached out to him and wanted to connect and talk about some GWA stuff for the year and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, well, why don't we just record it? And so here we are. And as usual, I get the illustrious, beautiful Kirkpatrick joining me as a host. So we're just going to have some fun. So Dave, why don't you just jump in and kind of give us your background real fast, kind of how you got to the seat you're sitting in today. And then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Gio, and a pleasure to be on the podcast. And hello to listeners and viewers. To be honest, how I got to this seat today was walking from my bedroom across to my office as I'm working from home in Edinburgh, Scotland. But yes, I am the Senior Commercial Director of Anytime Mailbox and Anytime Postage, who I guess are a peripheral service provider within the co-working sector, do a lot of work with great co-working businesses. And co-working was my background. I've got a master's degree in finance and real estate. After a Bachelor of Economics, I've worked in kind of investment management and then in on the real estate side. And I had some time at IWG, I guess we all know, the kind of world's largest co-working company. And my time there was in, of all things, the virtual office space. And that's what got me on that kind of side of the business, and eventually made my way over to Anytime Mailbox, who I guess provide digital mail products that really plug into that virtual office space. So I kind of know a fair bit about the co-working industry, about real estate from a kind of academic and investment perspective, as well as then, my role now in more virtual office and making sure we can help co-working companies make as much money as possible.
That's awesome. I got a bunch of questions about that, but I'm going to start. Kurt, David doesn't know you, so why don't you make a quick introduction as to who you are and what your background is? And most of our listeners obviously know who you are, but it'd be great for him to know who's on here with him.
Nothing like a totally unfiltered, unscripted podcast where I'm introducing myself to the guest, Gio. That's great. Kirkpatrick, VP of Sales at Ascensus here in North America. Ascensus, obviously a 20-year-old company founded in the UK, but I lead up sales here in the US. And my question for you, David, so some of the things that we see from practice in co-working from operators that we deal with on a daily basis is this kind of peeking over the curtain to see what IWG is doing, but not really understanding some of the things that maybe are happening behind the scenes or what makes the machine turn. It sounds like you had your hands really in how the virtual office was being run. What are some things that you think that a listener might find surprising or interesting about best practices that they have that maybe you've lifted and used in your world? Or I'll kind of leave that open to you to fill in the blank.
Yeah, I think a better way to put it is kind of what were you doing when you were at IWG? Kind of what prepared you for this role, and what secret sauce do you have behind the IWG curtain?
Yeah, look, I think it's always a very interesting part of my career and within the co-working industry, a real smart player like that. I think what's really important is understanding my role there was a global role. So looking at all markets. And it's something that I think IWG and indeed some of the other global co-working companies do really well is cater to those individual markets. And this is what I would be saying to individual operators is you've got to cater to your market, and you've got to understand, when you look at someone like the likes of an IWG or even take a WeWork or any of these kind of network-based co-working companies, they have scale. Now, you might not have scale, but you've got other unique offerings that are going to play in your market. And it's all about if you can dial into that market and you can make sure you're making the specific changes for those markets, you're going to do really, really well. One of the things I always loved is when I was at IWG, it was at the time that WeWork was kind of still under its former ownership and, giving away everything for free. You were getting the free beers, the free coffees, the free everything. And the thing we would talk about at IWG at the time was this concept of, hey, if I was a hotel and I gave out free room service, my hotel would be at 100% occupancy. Don't you worry about that, almost no matter what my prices were. But I wouldn't necessarily be running a profit. And so it's something that's always really important and that I take to all the operators I speak to is like, well, what's actually going to turn me a profit? And co-working as an industry is so much about that kind of leasing arbitrage, right? Of taking these bigger leases and breaking it down into smaller memberships and smaller leases. It's like, where is my margins and what else can I do within my market to get ahead? And that's something that you'll see the big players are doing that. Now, yes, they've got scale and you're never going to compete with them on scale, but you absolutely can and should compete with them with what you can do in your market that they can't.
Let's talk about that because that's, I think, really topical, very interesting to anyone who's listening to this. What are some things that you've identified that you can overnight deploy to help drive those revenues?
I think one of the biggest things you can do is look at your kind of product mix and revenue mix. So if you're looking at your location and you're saying, okay, 100% of my customer profile is someone renting a fixed desk or an actual office, and they all live locally, and it's about them having a place to work, and they're all small businesses. Well, now I've got something I can dial in on. It's like, okay, if that's my customer profile and all I've got in available is more of these small offices that I'm looking to lease out, then how am I targeting that customer? I probably don't necessarily need to look as hard into, online paid advertising if I know it's local small businesses that are using my location. I need to get maybe more into like a letterbox drop, go to the business fairs and the local business community events to find and maybe offer a referral program or something like that. Because I have understand my local market and customer and the revenue mix there. But then I can start to look at opportunities. And I guess that's what I see on the virtual office side. And that was something that was always useful when at IWG, but also something I can kind of speak to now at Anytime Mailbox is you're going, hang on, there's a whole income stream here available to me that I can kind of tack on to what I'm already doing that's working well. And that doesn't have to be, obviously, I'm going to point to virtual office and digital mail because I know that so well. But it's even things like, food and beverage, in meeting room catering. There's so many additional services that I could be offering to my customer base. As long as I know what that customer base is and what I'm doing well, I can start to increase those margins. So I would be looking at it like that. Like that's the simplest way I can put it is get to understand who is my current customer, where am I doing well currently, and then what are the services I can add to that, and how do I get more of those types of customers? And if you can follow that playbook, I think you can do really, really well at the moment, regardless of what the competition's doing. You then kind of don't have to worry about your IWGs of the world, your WeWorks, what the guy down the road's doing.
Well, I'm going to digress a little bit even and give people a better landscape of who you are and where you sit. So you're actually in the UK, right? So help us understand you're in the UK, how much your business is and your experience is UK, Europe based versus the US. Kind of what is your breadth and scope of the markets you handle and that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So still very much a global role for myself in Anytime Mailbox. If anything, tasked with expanding the business. We've got a big percentage of our business in North America, but ambitions to grow and support. We've already got strong business across Europe, across Australia, parts of Southeast Asia that we're looking to improve and grow. And I think that's something I've always been a big believer in. So yeah, I live and am based in the UK. I'm also an Australian citizen and an Irish citizen. So I've lived and worked in Australia and Ireland. You'll find me in America every let's say about every 8 weeks or so, visiting the team. We've got a lot of our team on the West Coast, so typically visiting there. But I think the enjoyment I get is out of the global business and the interesting trends that happen in these different locations. Particularly like you take somewhere like Southeast Asia, I spent some time in Hong Kong. And if you want to see, co-working, if you want to see office real estate and an interesting market, a place like Hong Kong where there's literally no more land to develop, you're buying older buildings, redeveloping them. Some of these buildings are being done by developers who have literally no debt. They're financing this all from cash flow. There's a wealth of opportunity, but that's a completely different setup to I did some work here in Scotland on remote and rural co-working. And I'm talking places in Scotland where there's like 100 people in the village, but the village bank has recently closed its branch. There's not necessarily a post office. The pack and ship store's gone. And it's like, well, that's actually a great co-working opportunity to build this kind of flexible hub business where you're using an asset like real estate. Maybe it's a old church or an old office building that still exists in the street on this village, and you make it flexible to be all of those things. And that's where, co-working becomes flexible working, and you suddenly realize there's like opportunities in all of these places. So I really do have an eye to that global market because I think there's so many fun little unique things we can do.
You know, rural Scotland and rural America probably have more in common than you might think.
Mm-hmm.
Are those deployments financed by local government? Is it subsidized in any way, shape, or form, or is this truly entrepreneurial endeavors that go out and spin up operation?
Definitely a combination of both. So you'll see this with local governments trying to give a push for a certain representation in their region. And Scotland's, I would say, as a nation's very, very good at that. We have these kind of local councils that invest heavily through various government funds in creating these locations. But then there is also the entrepreneurial side. And I think in a rural location, my experience of the people that live and work there is by nature, they're very entrepreneurial because you don't have all the services on your doorstep. So quite often you have to be that person. You have to come up with that solution. And it's why I really enjoyed getting a window into that. And I would be very confident that it's a similar situation in rural America where it's not about being an office. It's about being a space. It's about utilizing real estate in a way that is truly flexible to enable that neighborhood to exist. And so sometimes that's going to be a doctor's surgery. Sometimes that's going to be a function center. Sometimes that's going to be office space. Sometimes a bank, post office, all those other examples I already used.
So you're saying that surgery centers and doctors' offices are now the new co-working. That's what I'm taking away from this conversation.
Look, I think there's flexible, right? If we're really going to say we're flexible working, there's no reason why, a fixed term office couldn't be to a dental surgery, GP, general practitioner, doctor, we call them here in Britain, because what it's all about is creating this, neighborhood effect of having all the services and utilizing the space in the best way possible.
Sure. Yeah. A number of years ago, I did a deal with a really well-known medical REIT to do exactly this in 2019, to deploy in March of 2020. And that's where that deal died. Anyway, Gio, I'm sure you have a million questions.
No, I mean, I think it's so interesting. I mean, you guys, that's what I loved about having you on. I kind of told David is you're having conversations from a vendor and landlord and, operator perspective. Sometimes I don't get to. And I think that's the fun dynamic with having Jamie or yourself or someone that like approaches the business different than me. So, I mean, those are all great questions. I mean, David, I think what I would ask you is, I think you mentioned you like wearing your suit all the way through the day until your wife sees you in it so that she sees how dapper you are. So how long you've been married? What are the qualities you love the most about your wife?
Yeah, I am happily married 2 years now, 2.5 years, and I've been with my wife for about 8 years. I am originally Scottish, despite what the voice will sound like to the listeners and viewers. But I moved around the world a lot as a child, and I came back to Scotland for my master's degree, and I did it alongside my wife, and that's when I met her. So that was some 8 or 9 years ago now. And so I think that was one of my favorite qualities that I love about my wife is that she actually approached me in the first lecture. So I was kind of thinking I was being one of those kind of, cooler guys sitting at the back thinking, let's see how this kind of all plays out in a relatively boring accounting lecture. And this, in my opinion, beautiful woman walks up to the back row and kind of says to me, "Hey, who are you? Tell me a bit about yourself." And so that confidence was really appealing to me. And then someone who was interested in the many lives I've lived, having lived all across the world, but she's really grounded in family first and has a lot of the values that I think you find in a place like Scotland. People have a real national pride here, and it's a very special place. Has to be if you're willing to put up with the fact that the sun goes down real early in the winters and it rarely gets above, I guess in Fahrenheit for your North American listeners, rarely gets above kind of 60, sometimes 70 degrees if we're really lucky.
It must have been the suit. I mean, that was clearly what drew her to you. So he just hasn't taken it off, Gio. It's a good move.
Yeah, that's it. 9 years of wearing the tie.
That's it.
It's that smile. Well, you like you said, you come over every 8 weeks or so to the US. I think one of the interesting parts for me is it's just and obviously I want to stick to let's start with the UK and the US or North America, right? There's a big gap between how operators deploy there, right? The execution of not necessarily the hospitality business, but certainly, the deal structures are different. I think they're further along, even from a landlord standpoint. I think we have more landlord buy-in in the UK than we do in North America. So help me understand kind of how that affects your business, kind of what are the conversations you and your teams are having? I mean, how do you approach the business in different ways as you're executing?
100%, Gio. I think culturally it's really interesting because there's enough similarity culturally, and not just through language and history and everything like that, but then there's enough difference that you really do need to have separate strategies. And then there's areas or pockets that I would say where things feel a little bit more in common.
Yeah.
The single biggest difference, and if I take myself out of Scotland and out of Edinburgh down to London, where I lived for a considerable amount of my life, is density. That's one of the biggest things that you're looking at. London as a city has such population density and such density of office space, but then also, hundreds of years of history of leasehold property rights. And so the entire real estate sector in London is so highly developed and highly in tune and has gone through so many cycles. Now, I'm not for a second saying you take somewhere like New York or even like LA or even parts of middle America, even let's say Atlanta or something like that. These are big cities that have similar kind of density levels, but maybe necessarily haven't gone through the same years and years. And I'm talking, hundreds of years of property innovation. And so I think there's an acceptance particularly in London, around the need to innovate what we're doing with office space. But I'll take it a little bit further and say there's this need to innovate with what we're doing with space in general. And I think density in a city kind of does that. It kind of leads you towards that. You couple that with some of the kind of legal structures that exist, and you end up with this kind of market, when I put my virtual office and digital mailbox hat on, that's very, very attractive. So a place like London, one of the things is every business in the UK has to have a kind of public registration, and it's via a government system called Companies House. Now, people don't want their home address available on a government system for anyone to look up if they know your business. So you're going to look to register at a specific address. And now when you take a place like London, there's addresses with prestige, there's places that are maybe much more lower cost and all about just giving you that privacy. And creates this huge need for the virtual office system. But it also creates this huge opportunity for co-working companies in London. And you'll see this a lot. The first thing they do is invest heavily in that virtual office side to underwrite the business. It's like, okay, if I've got this virtual office income coming in, I can look really creatively at how I'm going to lease up the rest of my space and how flexible I'm going to be around, kind of building out lounges or focusing more on co-working or fixed desk or office space. And that comes because you've got that steady rental, if I can call it, income coming from the virtual office business. And that works really well in a city location.
Yeah, no, the density makes sense, and the address makes sense for a virtual business because you could choose any address you want. I know that. I remember ServCorp, was it one financial or one downtown? That was like their number one performing asset because of revenue. from virtuals and just address service for years and years and years. And same with Regis downtown, choosing the right assets. Adjusted for currency, adjusted for, I guess, you know, various market dynamics, what does just an address service look like kind of on an average basis just for mail across the world?
Yeah, I would say there's very much a scale, and I'm going to put it into, I would kind of say 3 buckets. Your first bucket is quite simply a mail service. And that's where someone's maybe less worried about where the address is and they just need somewhere to receive mail for a privacy reason or, a digital nomad reason or a business reason. And that is typically much, much cheaper. And that's in line with the prices start from $9.99 that you'll see on our website, you'll see on almost any competitor website. And that is that bucket. The middle bucket that I'm going to refer to is now much more about a business address. And that's the situation we were essentially describing there, where there's a level of prestige required for the address. You might be advertising your business online using that address. You'll be receiving mail, and occasionally you may even need to go to that address for whatever purpose. But there's a level of prestige around that. And I would typically say you're then kind of jumping by about $20 minimum to start unlocking that address. So you should at minimum be seeing $29.99. Now that's going to change in a market like London, that's going to be much higher. LA, that's going to be much higher. But an address like that in maybe a secondary city in the UK, that might be somewhere like a Liverpool. In America, that might be somewhere like San Diego, might have slightly lower prices. And then the third bucket is that business address with add-on services. And again, this is what I think all co-working companies should be trying to push towards, is saying like, okay, I want the address business, but very much this is my opportunity to use that customer's flexible working needs and monetize them. And this is where you're saying, okay, I'm creating a kind of bundle or a package for you that includes the ability to receive all your mail, and we're going to scan in that mail and make it available to you. We'll forward it to you, all those kind of non-negotiables. I've also got a great prestigious address, and there's a reason why you would want to register here. Customers are going to be impressed, or suppliers are going to be impressed, and it's going to look good on the website. But then also I have that drop-in space and that flexibility to offer you. And is it a day a month or a certain number of meeting room credits a month or whatever system the operator is using? Because not only is that now a better customer for you in terms of long-term value to your business, but it's also a service that business likely needs. There's a reason they're registering there. Are they trying to is it an American business trying to attract customers in Britain? In which case they may need to visit in London and have a sales meeting kind of face to face. They'd love for that to be at their office if they've gone for that address rental. And I think that's the kind of third bucket where the price can be much more of a premium. So I would say that jump is then kind of double again. So if the first jump was $20, this jump should be at least $40. So the 29 is becoming 69 and upwards. And I think in really high performing cities, all of these prices, I should caveat, I'm saying are kind of the base price. In a high performing city, you're paying hundreds of dollars a month for this, because it really is a way of running a kind of remote business with the dial up into the services that you need.
Separate question. Sorry, Gio, if I'm dominating here. Just
No, you're good.
the folks that are scanning mail, the folks that are handling the actual documents and getting it into a digital format, do they need to be trained? Do they need to have any certifications or anything like that to be handling other people's mail?
Look, globally speaking, there's no kind of set training laws in nearly all the countries that we operate in. There's certain countries that we won't operate in for other legal reasons. But in all the countries that I've worked across where you can run legally a virtual office, there's no specific training that is required. That's where someone like an Anytime Mailbox, that's where we come in, is we provide a training platform for your staff so that you don't have to worry about it. They can go online and do we've spoken about university. It's essentially do the university lectures to understand how to use the system and how to do this safely. And then it's on us as a third party provider to make sure we're giving you all the compliant tools. So making sure that our servers are all secure and certified, to make sure that we're compliant with all the, appropriate payment regulations, and make sure that the data regulations. One of the differences that you'll typically find between North America and the UK, if we continue looking at that, is GDPR compliance across Europe. So that's a data protection regulation. It's really quite stringent and heavy across Europe and the UK.
Sure.
It's not something that's required in America, and it adds a layer of complexity. But in all cases, that's why I see the value in working with a third party. And I mean, I'm obviously going to say this representing a third party provider, but I do see it's a place where value is definitely had, is being able to manage that training, manage that compliance, and give you the tools, because these are not tools that you're just going to get, off the shelf from a software provider. It's about having a third party partner that can manage in that space.
And somebody who does that training, what is the probability of a beautiful person walking up to them after completing that training and asking to learn more about them?
Well, I think what's the common phrase? Your mileage may vary. So whilst I was lucky enough to have that one happen to me, I can't promise that to everyone.
Okay.
Well, that's a good transition. So question for you. So obviously you're extremely well-traveled, well-cultured, lived in different places. So if you were to pick the top 3 places, and I don't want to, I don't want to be like Sydney. I want like a waterfall outside Sydney. Give me examples, or give us examples of your 3 favorite places that you visited and why.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with my American example first.
Okay.
Lucky enough to go to the West Coast a lot, particularly around LA. And I think for people that are visiting, LA has this really kind of cool vibe that you're maybe not used to seeing from other places. But kind of really specifically, I love being down at Santa Monica Pier. I love
Okay.
being able to kind of, you can run or cycle along the waterfront, or just walk along the waterfront there. You're seeing people playing beach volleyball outside. It doesn't matter what time of year it is, the weather's always perfect. And then there's so many like spots you can grab something to eat. And I just think so many interesting people. You're going to see someone in a suit, you're going to see someone in workout gear, you're going to see everything within a mile. And so I would say that's definitely one of them. Australia's got so many amazing spots of natural beauty, but I do think on the east coast of Australia, I lived in Brisbane, the city, but I spent a lot of time north of Brisbane is an area called the Sunshine Coast. And a lot of people will know the Gold Coast. That's what everyone hears about. That's south of Brisbane. Just north of Brisbane is this place called the Sunshine Coast. And it's much quieter, more kind of local, known only beaches. And I think there's something really cool about being able to kind of go to a beach where it's filled with predominantly local people. If you kind of get talking to any of them, they're going to be able to recommend a cool spot for a drink or a cool spot to eat that you maybe would never find out. Certainly these are not the places that have spent a lot of time making sure they've got a Google My Business listing and that they've optimized all their reviews. These are just the places that Bob goes there all the time, so he knows to send you there. And also, I've got to say, biased towards these beaches in Australia, they have some of the coolest names. So I'm talking, there's a place called Mooloolaba Beach, you got Maroochydore, you got Majimba, Caloundra, all of these kind of traditional Indigenous Australian names for the regions. Beautiful, perfect beaches. So I'd say that's somewhere to visit. And then I can't go past my home country, Scotland. We've got something nowhere else has in St Andrews, the home of golf. Being a Scot, golf's a bit like religion here. So we take it very, very seriously. And I know a lot of Americans particularly come and visit St Andrews. I would say it's a kind of once in a lifetime trip. The feeling you get just being around it's a town that was built 1,000 years ago. There's still remnants from the original abbey there. And then you have the golf course that's the home of golf and the home of a sport that's really, really old and traditional. And it's super exciting to be in a small place like that and feel that aura. Now, the other 2 locations I gave you come with great weather. All I can tell you about St Andrews is, again, your mileage may vary. I don't think you're going to get great weather when you come, but I would highly recommend a trip.
Okay, those are 3 awesome choices. Kurt, what would yours be? If you were to give
Favorite
me,
favorite places I've
yeah,
traveled?
yeah.
I'm not as well traveled as either of you. However, I will speak to the GWA Immersive in Mexico City, which was just popped into my mind, maybe looking at Gio's smiling face. That was a fantastic experience. It was distant enough, but also familiar enough where I think it's really accessible to anybody who's looking to experience a nearby neighbor. I think that's super important to just venture out and check out. That was the most recent cool trip I did. I loved Italy. Italy was awesome, super special. Also, just culturally significant, and you feel the weight of history when you walk through Rome and the Vatican and all that amazing stuff. But lately, I've really been enjoying Allendale, New Jersey. Spending a lot of time there. It's really good. I'm in Manhattan at the moment, but wishing I was at home with the kids.
Yeah. So real fast, my Iceland was amazing in so many different places.
Mm.
So if y'all haven't been, I've been during winter and summer. And during summer, I mean, all the waterfalls are absolutely incredible. So had a blast there. I would say Interlaken, Switzerland was incredible. I'm afraid of heights, believe it or not, but I actually parasailed out there, and it was like, this is the only, if I'm going to do it, this is where I'm going to do it. So that was incredible for sure. And then the third one, it'd have to be a beach somewhere. Hawaii was pretty amazing. Really enjoyed that. Different parts of Kauai, there's amazing hikes and just beaches and stuff like that. So,
Could you put the video of you going down the pyramid in Mexico City? Because that was
oh,
really
that was,
enjoyable watching you deal with your fear of heights.
speaking of Grant, yeah, Grant, I was just with Grant the other day, and that was pretty funny watching Grant Barnhill with Shift and me going down the pyramids. Kurt, I love you so much. All right, back to David.
Link below.
Yes. David, are y'all still selling the postage machines? You
Yeah,
kind of want to talk
absolutely.
about that? I mean, I know, first of all, I mean, one of your founders was super involved in the industry with GWA on the board and everything else. So we miss seeing Matt's beautiful face, and I have a mustache today just in honor of him, and certainly miss him. But I still remember when he started, trying to deploy that, and y'all did a deal with IWG, funny enough. And so kind of where y'all at in that deployment of equipment and everything else?
Yeah, great question, Gio. And it's, I guess, speaks to the testament of this concept of additional services and additional
Yeah.
revenue lines, very much built around the co-working industry. And yet, as you pointed out, we've got a deal in place with IWG. We've got 1,500 of these postage kiosks. So what they are is it's quite simply a self-service postage kiosk. It enables anyone, but including staff members, the ability to generate a postage label for anything from a letter right up to a 70-pound parcel using an interface that's connected into the kiosk. So it's also very useful in areas with low or no staffing because it enables members to manage that post. Now, what we found was essentially one, with Virtual Office, you've got this large mail forwarding business that you've got to keep up with. And so having a streamlined solution to enable that is fantastic. But then two, there was just so many inquiries that IWG was getting as a business on, hey, I need this mailed somewhere. Can you guys do that? I need to send a package. I need to send a parcel. And they didn't really have a great system or functionality to do that. And every time the community associate, community manager, center manager, I've heard a million different names for that staff member's role, but the person at the front desk is being pulled away from other duties to manage something that maybe doesn't necessarily create enough revenue to justify that. So to
Right.
be able to offer it as a self-service facility is fantastic. To give some guidance, we've actually kind of gone further than the co-working industry, and we've got some of these in actual like pack and ship stores as well, because they view it like a grocery store views a self-checkout machine. They're going, this is fantastic. I can process more people without having more staff members. And so I guess that's the play within the co-working space, and why we've been offering that kiosk is to say, look, here's another way you could be making more revenue rather than having someone walk out of the building and go to a different store location to have something shipped. What if they could do it in your location and you could take a percentage of that transaction?
David, have traditional landlords adopted this at all, or has this solely been the domain of co-working?
Based on our existing relationships, we've targeted co-working companies in place of traditional landlords, but we have started to have some of those conversations where, yeah, you have an entire building looking to place one in a downstairs mailroom to enable that facility as opposed to specifically within the co-working space. But I think we've got to look at our roots, and I think Gio's point is fantastic. Matt was a big part of GWA, and we've got such a big connection to the co-working industry, not just myself, but our business. And so that's always who we're looking to serve first. And I think that's something we pride ourselves on, is like, we want to create innovative ways for co-working companies to do better and generate more revenue. And that's how we see ourselves as a partner, as opposed to, just specifically a vendor or a supplier, is to say, look, we're going to look at your pain points and look at what's going on with areas that we touch on and see if there's ways we can improve and other services that we can bring.
If you're evaluating your solution versus the rest of the market, tough question, but I'm sure you get it all the time. What is the unique differentiator that you bring?
I think across the combined businesses, so when I look at both Mailbox and Postage, it is indeed starts with innovation. We're very much offer a wide range of innovative services that potentially competitors can't or don't have the bandwidth to compete on. So offering that end-to-end service, digital mail on the inbound side, a postage kiosk on the outbound side. We've spent significant time and money on investing in tools to make life easier. So we're at the moment literally expanding our existing API set to cover even more things, because we want to make sure that that process is as simple and as easy for a co-working operator as possible. We do a huge job on the lead generation side, and I think this is one of the key advantages. And I guess I would recommend to all co-working operators is, on a lead gen side, we're doing the marketing for you, and you may not be experts in online marketing and you may not have the reach and the scale. Thankfully, we do, and we spend a lot of time and money on making sure we're targeting the right markets and acquiring customers for our operators. So we're able to help you with customers that you bring, but we also bring customers to you. And I think, whilst not necessarily unique in the market, but our skill set on being able to execute on that is really quite strong. And we've got significant growth plans in that. And that's not just across North America, that's across the world. And then if I have a kind of final point, it's just around compliance. Because of my time at IWG, I know as well as anyone the risks and dangers of running virtual office services across the world. And I know our listeners in North America will all be thinking the same four numbers whenever I say that, which is 1583, the 1583 form, the USPS compliance form that they need to get across the line with all their renters, and then making sure that they are a CMRA and that whole process. So we offer significant support and an ability to help with all of that. I maintain a very close relationship with the USPS and visit every time I'm out in DC, because we want to make sure that we're being as compliant and helping operators be as compliant as possible. But on top of that, I've got experience with running these compliance systems across the EU, across the UK, Australia, where compliance is actually slightly different in all of those locations. But everyone follows the same principle. You've really got to know your customer, and you've got to collect IDs, and you've got to make sure you've got all the forms and you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. That becomes a lot easier when you have a partner helping you along the way and making sure and holding you and them accountable. And I think that's something we do really well.
Have you broken up any international drug rings as of yet?
Technically, yeah, I guess we have. And this is public knowledge, so we're allowed to speak about it. There was a USPS case involved where we were able to use the identity documents that were used to register a mailbox, were part of a wider case. It was a guy was registering mailboxes across the west coast of America, including in Alaska, and shipping drugs in and out of the country. And it was all done with fake IDs. But this was the whole point of the 1583 form, is the USPS inspectorate were really happy because they have a copy of the fake ID. And so they can use that as evidence when prosecuting to showcase, hey, look, you signed up to this fraudulently, and here's all the evidence train, and this is why. And so it's something I like to reference that case, because it's really important for operators to understand the point of 1583 compliance in America is, it's not that your staff need to be experts on IDs and be able to spot a fraudulent ID. It's about helping the USPS inspectorate capture the evidence. And so if you've got the scanned copy of the ID and they've got it in the BCG to be able to look at what used to be a really difficult process for them of tracking these individuals and these IDs, they've now can do in seconds. And so I think it is pretty cool and exciting. There's not much that's cool and exciting about mail and compliance, but when it works, it works.
Is it true that you and Giovanni are starting a true it's called the Mailmen?
These rumors may be exaggerated, but I hope no one's registered the intellectual property behind that, because I might now.
Well played, Kurt. Well played. Always well played. Well, David, yeah, you're tapped out. Well, really appreciate you joining us and getting to know you a little bit better, and excited to see you at more events coming up with, we should coordinate your trips along with GWA events, and hopefully you'll be at Juicy, and, look forward to seeing your team. And just, again, I mean, we miss Matt, and you and I had this conversation in the fall, right? Missing the Anytime team around. So hoping to see more and more of you guys, but really appreciate you taking time to join us, and really appreciate you getting so dapper for us and making us look so bad.
Look, my absolute pleasure, Gio and Kurt. It's been a pleasure, and always happy to talk about the industry. Obviously, I'm always going to be biased towards talking about virtual offices and mail, but yeah, as my background suggests, I got a good grip on the wider industry. So if anyone ever has any questions or wants to speak to me, please do reach out. And yeah, hopefully I'll see plenty of you at various GWA and industry events, and not just in North America. If we do have any listeners joining from the UK or Europe, be sure to hit me up, because it's always nice to meet closer to home as well.
Well, Coworking Europe was just announced. We thought it was going to be in Copenhagen, but he snuck up on us and we're doing Paris. So it'll be my first one. I'm going to make sure that I find a way to be there. So super excited about that. And then Liz announced South Africa in September. So that's good. They're going to do Cape Town. So that'll be super cool. And then I actually got a call with the Australia Flex Association in the next couple of days. So excited to hear where theirs is going to be. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunities worldwide. So hope to see all of you there, and certainly David, you and your team. So really appreciate it, but have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, gentlemen.
Thanks, Kurt, for jumping on.
Of course. Great job, David.